So as chair of the budget committee, I find that due to the state of emergency declared by the governor as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, in accordance with the governor's emergency order number 12, pursuant to executive order 2020-04, this public body is authorized to meet electronically. Please note there's no physical location to observe and listen contemporaneously to this meeting, which was authorized pursuant to the governor's emergency order. However, in accordance with the emergency order, I'm now confirming that we are providing public access to the meeting by telephone with additional access possibilities by video or other electronic means. Utilizing WebEx for this electronic meeting, all members of the board have the ability to communicate contemporaneously during this meeting through this platform. Public has access to contemporaneously listen and, if necessary, participate in this meeting through dialing the following phone: 1-408-418-9388 and access code 179-938-2683. Or by clicking on the website address that's been included, the link to the website address that's been included with the meeting notifications. B, providing public notice of the necessary information for access to the meeting. We previously gave notice to the public of the necessary information for access to the meeting, including how to access the meeting using WebEx or telephonically. Instructions have also been provided on the website of the board at www.pembroke-nh.com. C, providing a mechanism for the public to alert the public body during the meeting if there are problems with access. Please email acamidge@sau53.org. Andy Camidge. D, adjourning the meeting if the public is unable to access the meeting. In the event the public is unable to access the meeting will be adjourned and rescheduled. Please note that all votes that are taken during this meeting shall be done as roll call votes, and we will start by taking attendance. So, as usual, please respond, you're here and whether there's anybody in the room with you as part of this. Andy.
Present and alone.
Clint.
Present and alone.
Mike.
Present and alone.
Dave.
Present and alone.
Jerry.
Present and alone.
Peter.
Present and alone.
Paul.
Present and alone.
Brian.
Present and alone.
Armand.
Present and alone.
Karen.
Present and alone.
And I'm obviously present and I am alone. With that, our first order of business is approval of the minutes of January 28th. Do we have a motion to consider?
A motion to consider approval of the minutes?
Okay, we have a motion from Karen. Second?
Second, Armand.
Sounds like Armand. Any corrections or comments? All right. All those in favor of approval of the minutes? Karen?
Yes.
Armand?
Yes.
Brian?
Yes.
Paul? Paul, you're on mute.
I just stepped away. Yes.
Okay. Peter?
Yes.
Jerry?
Yes.
Dave?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Clint?
Yes.
And Andy?
Yes.
Okay. Minutes approved. All right, so our business tonight is to reflect upon the input we received during the public hearing, which we just concluded, obviously, and to determine if we want to proceed with final votes on final recommendations on warrant articles for town and or school. Pleasure of the board. Jerry.
Yeah, I'm gonna hold fast on my position on the creation of a new truck or the school district for vehicle replacement. I still think that the voters of the town should be agents to expend. I heard Andy's explanation of why they want to do it. We don't do it with police cruisers. We don't do it with town trucks. We don't do it with fire trucks. I don't think the school district should be allowed to have a different standard. And I would really like to see that that language stricken. I also had an opportunity to study the articles. I thought that the configuration is somewhat unique, that the first article actually has an impact on the tax rate, where the second one is funded from unexpended appropriations in a subsequent year. That seems to be an odd way to construct the article, but I think it will fly that way. So I guess my objection is the language that makes the school board agents to expend, and I would support revisiting that with that language stricken. Maybe we could only do that from the floor of the meeting, but that would be my objection, and I cannot support those articles with the language written that way.
Okay, Karen, who just stepped away.
Oh, yeah, I'm back. Sorry. Yeah, I just wanted to support Jerry's concerns with the wording on the warrant article as the school board as the agents to expend those funds. I agree with the reasoning that Jerry said, so I won't belabor that. I feel that the school has a pretty healthy surplus every year, and we all understand why that is necessary to accommodate things that come up. We look at the average over the past 10 years, it's, somewhere between 500,000 and $1 million. So I think if something completely unplanned happened to a vehicle and they had to find funds, I think they could do that. So I support that, the wording changing on that article. Thank you.
Andy.
So I guess I just wanted to ask, and Karen just answered it, so maybe it's moot now, but I'll just ask Jerry, and certainly, not trying to be combative or anything, just the examples you gave of fire trucks and police cruisers and things like that. I'm under the assumption that, you guys own more than one of those. So if we have only one pickup and it dies in June after we've just had a meeting, to the point where it's more expensive to repair than the worth of the vehicle, it just seems to me that that's a poor use of taxpayer money. So I'm just wondering, how you would suggest going about that if we cannot hold a public hearing to ask the town if we can spend the money. And I what I said at the school board meeting the other night, which is my feeling on it, because I've gone back and forth since we've been having this conversation too on kind of where I land on this. And I guess where I landed on it was, if we have to have a public hearing, which I believe we do, and the town thought that we were acting in an inappropriate way, the only way that the fund that's specifically for vehicles could possibly get funded is at the March meeting. It's not the March meeting anymore. So I think if this board or any future board were to kind of overstep their bounds on that, then the townspeople could simply not fund those warrant articles in the future. But I guess I'm wondering how to navigate this, because I'm getting significant concern from the school side that if we lose a vehicle in the middle of the year and we have to wait until March to try to replace it, that's going to be a significant burden.
Jerry?
Yeah, my response to that is quick and simple. There are things in the fire department like $1 million aerial truck that if that's damaged, it's you say, well, you only have one pickup truck. The town only has one aerial fire truck. Other things, if the vehicle is damaged in an automobile accident, there's insurance that covers that. If it's a transmission that goes bad or the engine that goes bad, it might cost you thousands of dollars, but it wouldn't cost you 20 grand. So I got to believe with the kind of surpluses that you have in your budget, you could handle that and get around to replacing the vehicle, especially since I'm on CIP. That truck is 10 years old, but it's got pathetic mileage on it. I've heard the argument that a vehicle that doesn't run a lot of miles has a problem. It doesn't have a problem that causes that vehicle to fail suddenly. And I think that being consistent, allowing the voters the final bite on the apple is the right way to go.
Karen?
Hi, Mark. I just had a couple of comments to some of the information that was presented in the meeting. I just want to make sure there's clarity on the appropriations on the school side. The number that was presented in the presentation was 0.8% increase. I just want to make sure that we're really clear and confirm that we're still actually, it's 1.4% increase, that the value that we're showing on the tax summary of tax rate sheet is accurate. And I understand that includes the warrants, but that's the relevant number is the total warrants and appropriations, 1.4%. So I just want to get that clarity. And the second point of clarity I want to get, I'm looking at page 56 in the school board packet. There was a question about the numbers enrollment. There was it was a question regarding the state education adequacy reductions and how much of that was associated with student enrollment. And there was a response in that question or that answer suggesting that the enrollment is actually going up this year. And I just want to get clarity because on page 56 in the school board packet, the numbers are clearly down, not up. On the elementary school, we're down from 346, we're down to 317. At Three Rivers School, we're down from 327 down to 312, and from PA it's 763, I think it says, down to 753. So I just want to get clarity on that statement of the enrollment as well. Thank you.
Amber, would you like to clarify?
Sure. When I spoke about increase in enrollment and anticipation of that, it's high school strictly only because I was speaking in regards to tuition revenue. So elementary and middle school wouldn't bring in tuition, it would be the high school. So when I say we're looking at an increase in enrollment, that we're looking at what our current classes look like, what our 8th graders coming in and our 12th graders leaving. When taking that into consideration, those numbers do come in higher than what we currently are at.
And Amber, I saw you shaking your head in confirmation regarding the appropriations amount on a tax sheet. Is that correct?
Yeah, we estimated budget appropriation at 0.82. So that first block, as I mentioned a little bit earlier, when the other gentleman had questioned it, when we are talking about ours, we're only talking strictly about, when I mentioned that number, it's strictly budget appropriation. So I want to make sure that we're not trying to not be transparent. For what I was discussing earlier was strictly budget appropriation. And then each warrant article has its own percentage, should there be a tax impact on it. So that's the difference. It is 1.4 when you add the warrant articles in. But when I was giving my summary, it was strictly on the budget appropriation.
So Amber, can you, because I suspect the question will come up, can you explain the difference between your budget appropriation and our operating budget number up above?
I'm not sure.
I'm sorry, I'm referring to the tax sheet.
So, maybe I'm not understanding still. I thought that's what I just described. The operating budget is the budget appropriation for the operating budget. So we are estimating a 0.82% increase. And then if you add the warrant articles to it, it brings it up to the 1.4.
Do you have a copy of the tax sheet handy, or perhaps Andy can share it?
Yeah, sure. Let me grab
Because
it.
our operating budget block here shows an increase of 2.9%.
Let me go back.
And I just want to make sure everybody understands. We're all talking apples and apples because so that everybody's clear.
Okay, so you're talking about this first block up at the top where it says operating budget?
Yes. Because that would
So
typically.
the difference is because in our actual operating budget, when you look at our actual budget, it includes the warrant articles for this current fiscal year. So the way you're comparing it in your block is just what budget appropriation for the actual school budget, but that number doesn't include the warrant articles for 2020.
Correct.
If you look at the school budget for the year 2020, it is the budget plus the warrant articles, because once the budget passes and any warrant articles passes, it then becomes part of the actual budget. But we can't add those to it until once they've already passed.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I figured somebody was going to ask, so I figured I might as well do it myself. Brian, I believe you're up next.
All right, I think you can hear me. A lot of the conversation that I was going to have just took place. I wanted to make a couple comments based on what Karen and Amber said. We have on this committee always been interested in the changes in the operating budget, and I think it is worthy to see that number, but I do think that gets people in the town who are not as familiar with the numbers when they start hearing this range of numbers and then they try to find it on the sheet and it doesn't match, then you start to get these ideas that we're intentionally leaving things out or trying to hide things. So I would suggest that for our presentation, although I wouldn't say don't mention that lower number because it's relevant to what you're talking about, but try to bring things back to the numbers that are on the tax impact sheet that all the townspeople are going to have in front of them to help them orient between what they're hearing and what they see in the paper. That would be my suggestion.
Brian, Mike.
Yeah, not to confuse issues, but I was going to try to help out Amber based on your prior conversations and the notes. I believe that the 0.82 is in reference to the Fund 1 increase and not the total appropriation. So I would agree with what Brian is saying because it doesn't show up here in the tax sheet. So on the top, you're showing the appropriation, which is true, the total appropriation. But the Fund 1, which is a subset of that, is the 0.82 that you were talking about before. And that's what the confusion is.
Amber shaking her head.
Yeah.
1 second, let me, see if I can pull it up.
I don't have that summary document in front of me, so because I think that's where that was covered.
I have the summary in front of me, but I just want to pull up the budget real quick.
Sure.
Make sure that I'm understanding. The total district appropriation is 0.82, not total Fund 1. Total Fund 1 was an increase of 0.44. Total district appropriation in regards to the budget, not including warrant articles, unless it's for the current fiscal year. For next year, warrant articles are not added in until after they've already passed the vote. We can't show them in here because they're not, I don't know, maybe we can. I've never seen it done that way. But the only time warrant articles actually show in the operating budgets we show you for voted actual are ones that have already passed. The proposed, because they're technically not part of an operating budget until they pass, are not included. But if you actually look at our operating budget that we're proposing, the total district appropriation, not including warrant articles, for the current fiscal year is 0.82. I understand where the confusion is. I think the tax sheet that the town does is very different than the school side. So I understand why there's confusion in percentages.
Karen, do you have a follow-up on this topic or is that, or something else?
I have a comment on this topic, a short comment, and I have a question on something else.
Okay, let's do that. Let's stay on this topic. It's got a feeling Jerry may want to jump in on this topic as well. So, go ahead.
May I comment?
Yes.
Just a quick comment on this. I think we need to, and I think Brian hit the nail on the head. Thank you, Brian, for once again bringing clarity. I think that we want to keep in mind the intention of this is to really make sure that the residents understand what the impact is to them. And I'm not suggesting that there's any underminedness going on here. I'm just trying to bring clarity as well. And an example, I guess I would leave you with in that is if we had a warrant article currently that was scheduled to raise $5 million in a warrant article, we would be remiss to not mention that in this discussion, to only mention the 0.8% increase. So I think that's the example of really trying to get at the intention of this, is to make sure that the public has the information that they need to understand the impact to them. Thank you, Mark.
And I'll swing back to you. Jerry, do you want to have the floor here?
I need to ask a question without sitting down and trying to do the math mid-meeting. Is it correct that if I take the appropriation level and I add to it, which of the appropriation level is where we get the 0.8, I add to it the collective bargaining agreement warrant article and the articles for the capital reserve, that's what gets me to the 1.4?
The 1.4 on our tax sheet, the 27,641,000 is the operating budget of 27,474 up above, plus the warrant articles.
Right. So we have to add in the cost of the CBA for the paraprofessionals and the capital reserve warrant articles, correct?
Correct.
That's what gets me there.
Correct.
All right. I thought that was correct, but I wanted to hear somebody confirm my belief. Thank you.
Yep. Yep. Okay, so we'll go back to Karen. So we're shifting gears.
Okay, new topic for me. And again, this is just a point of clarity. I'm just trying to understand. There was a question from residents, one of the residents, with regards to the reduction in revenues and what makes up that reduction in revenues. And we started talking about the New Hampshire State education grants, the adequacy education grants, and there was a question about if the number of students, if the education grants is relative to the number of students that we have. Could I get clarity on that? I always get confused about those grants and what they represent. Is it take a number of students, multiply it by a certain amount, and we get a number? So is it relative to the number of students? Thank you.
I don't know, Amber, is that one, is that best for you?
That is certainly a part of it. I do have something that I can share with you. I thought I shared it early on in this budget process with you all, but I have a document. There is a pretty extensive formula, and I also have the actual document from the DOE that shows all of the different categories that makes up what our final adequacy aid is. So enrollment is certainly part of that, but there is a year lag as well. So they're looking at enrollment from the prior year when calculating. So enrollment does play an effect. It also free and reduced lunch, English as a second language. So there are a variety of different factors that go into that formula.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Other questions, comments? So I'm looking at the clock. It's 9 p.m. You know, we've been on for 2 hours at this point. Our business to complete our cycle involves voting on both the town and school warrant articles again. We can do some, we can do all. We have the ability to have one more meeting next Thursday as well. So I guess I'm interested in the pleasure of the committee here. Clint.
Is it possible to make a meeting, to make a motion that essentially reaffirms our previous votes? I don't know if anybody's been persuaded to change their vote from the first time around. And I assume that's all been recorded in the minutes. So if that's a possibility, then that's the kind of motion I would make.
I believe it's a possibility. However, I believe we may have some change on some voting changes regarding the school warrant articles on the vehicle side, because there were several votes that were sort of in anticipation of wording changes to the to who's the agent to expend, I believe.
Well, if that's the case, I would like to support Andy's position in allowing the school board to be agents to expend. For the purposes of argument, which I'm not afraid of, as most people are aware, the whole idea that comparing them to the fire department and the police department doesn't make sense. The reason is the fire department and the police department have backups. The school district does not. So if that aerial truck that the fire department has goes out of commission, that doesn't mean they're not going to get an aerial truck ultimately to the fire, because they have mutual aid. There's some other fire department out there that will come to their aid. And a backup for every police department is the state police. So to have a breakdown in what amounts to a very minimal fleet of vehicles is important to be able to respond to that problem immediately. So being agents to expend with the idea of a public hearing makes perfect sense to me. That's all I have to say on it.
Andy?
I was trying not to bring it up again, but since Clint did, I had one more, I guess, comment/question, and I would be interested to know if Jerry has a knowledge of this, and I might be 100% wrong. But trying to think through this, I thought that I had read somewhere at one point that it would not be, in a situation like this, we may not be able to simply use surplus funds, because if the voters say no, it's a no, regardless of where the money is coming from. Amber, is that true? Am I making that up?
And if an article fails, we cannot utilize operating dollars for those expenses in that following year. It would have to hit the warrant article again.
So if that's the case, then I guess I would just reaffirm, if we also can't use surplus for it, then I really think we'd be in a pinch if we lost the truck and had to wait a year.
Jerry.
Yeah, I can't say if I've ever heard such a massive convoluted logic before. We've got a 10-year-old pickup truck that I think's got 40,000 miles on it. You don't need it a lot. If it goes out of service, you rent one for whatever you need. There are other options. And the idea that if this is defeated, you can't use surplus money. I'm not talking about defeating it. I'm talking about allowing the voters of Pembroke to have the final say on it, like we do our other vehicles. It's just consistent. If we're going to take this kind of logic, then we ought to let the town buy replaced vehicles anytime they want to. And the concept of a public hearing is a joke. You hold a public hearing on something like this, if anybody else shows up at all, it's, oh, okay, good. And then the board goes on to do whatever they want to do. It's not a permission that I would like to see granted so leisurely. It's my comment. I just can't support this.
Karen?
Yes, I agree with Jerry's sentiment on this warrant article as well. I think for these large expenditure purchases, I think we really want to make sure that our town residents really do have the final say. The more we move out of that, I think the less residents feel like they have control, like they have say. And I personally think that we need more resident and citizen involvement in our government. I don't want to see us invoking policies and that are discouraging that. I mean, that's the last thing we need. We need people to get involved more. And these kinds of setting these things up this way encourages our residents to stay involved, to make sure that they understand that their voice is important. And it's up to us as leaders, right, Andy, to go to those meetings and make a good argument on why we need to spend that money. And if we can't do that, then we shouldn't get it. As far as I'm concerned, the burden should be on us to convince residents why it's a good idea to spend that much money in that way. So I support changing the wording. Thank you.
Armand?
Yeah, no, I'm in agreement with Jerry and Karen on this one because my wife and I can't stick, that money aside just in case something happens to one of our vehicles, and we have to find a way to make do one way or another. So to allow these people, the school to have this money just to put it aside, I understand that they got problems, stuff like that, but we have problems. And it was mentioned before, especially now with this COVID stuff like that, everybody's hurting. And to put money aside in case some things should maybe possibly come happening, it's not the time to do it. We don't have what it takes to pay our own stuff, our own problems that we have to solve. We're going to ask the town to just put some money aside so that just in case possibly maybe something could maybe happen. No, I'm sorry, I can't. If my wife and I can't do it, my family can't do it, I can't see doing it for anybody else. And so I agree that it should be up to us to make that decision, the town. Thank you.
Dave?
Thank you, Mark. Just a couple things in the interest of moving things along. We've heard, I think, a good debate on both sides. We're gonna take a vote on this warrant article as a budget committee. The vote is only going to be recommend or not recommend. The town is ultimately going to make a decision on that warrant article at the school meeting. All we're going to do is recommend it or not recommend it. I happen to agree with Andy and Clint. I know there are arguments on the other side. I'd just like to suggest that as we move along, as we get to warrant articles, if there are any changes from last week when we voted, that we re-vote on that article. But if there are no changes, we can just move along and until we get to, for instance, this warrant article, and then take a vote on it again. Just a suggestion. I'm basically would like to move the question. Thank you.
That was my original comment, by the way.
Okay. So are we ready to vote? It sounds like we are. Okay. I think for the town, we can probably do we want to reaffirm? Because we haven't heard anything, but we do have the one here. Jill, do you have record of who voted which way?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So we could refer to that as from a reaffirmation standpoint.
Yes.
In which case I guess I still need to do a roll call vote because we are under, so if I got to do a roll call vote, it's kind of a moot point, right?
I would
Because otherwise
disagree.
you'd be, otherwise we're voting to, are you reaffirming or, or not? And that's even more confusing perhaps.
Last year, the vote was just made a motion to reaffirm the recommendations, and that was the whole thing for
Okay.
all of them. So you could do reaffirm the recommendations on the town warrant articles.
That was the nature of my motion, to reaffirm all of them at the same time. So unless you've changed your vote, there's no point in doing a roll call other than on the motion to reaffirm.
Okay, so are you formally making that motion? Okay, for the
Yeah.
school, that's for the school. Okay.
Hey, Mark, I'm not clear on what we're voting on. Could you clarify, please? Thank you.
Okay, so the motion that's on the floor, which has not yet been seconded, would be a vote to accept, in effect, reaffirm / in effect accept the recommendations of the budget committee as voted on previously.
Everything?
Everything.
Yes, that's the motion.
So this would be an all or nothing, again, for the school.
I'll second that. I'll second that, Mark.
Okay, Dave is seconded. Jerry?
All right, you have me confused. We're reaffirming everything for the town and the school in a single vote. Is that correct?
No, we'll do them separately.
Just the school.
So now we're doing just the school, following which it would take another motion to do just the town.
Correct.
Well,
Thank you for that clarity. I thought it was everything.
Thank you. I have a concern about the vote. If there's anybody who does not want to reaffirm their vote, I would support, even if it's only one person, even if it doesn't change the outcome, I would support on whichever article they wanted to change their vote in, retaking that vote. So I'm concerned that if we simply take a majority vote to reaffirm, and then somebody who votes after me says no, maybe we can do that, and then I'll move reconsideration. But I kind of feel that if this is not unanimous, we should offer whoever wanted to change their vote the opportunity to do so.
That's the nature of a motion to reaffirm. You're correct,
Okay.
Brian.
All right, thank you. I appreciate the clarification.
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor for the school budget to reaffirm the previous recommendations. Is there any other question or discussion before I call the vote? And a yes vote reaffirms, reconfirms, reaccepts the previous set of recommendations for all the school articles. Okay, so I will start with Andy.
Yes.
Clint.
Yes.
Mike.
No.
Dave.
Yes.
Jerry.
No.
Peter.
No.
Paul.
No.
Brian.
No.
Armand.
Yes.
Karen.
No.
Okay, so I have 6 no's. 1, 2. So I have 6 no's, so the motion fails. So, would someone like to make a motion to discuss items? So I think our default now is to go article by article, right?
Well, what you can do, Mark, is if there are any people, read out what the count was for the first article that required a vote. And if there's a no vote in there, that person who recalls that they voted no can come back and say that that's what they want to do. They want to change their vote. They can do the same thing if they voted yes and they now want to vote no. That's a more complex way of doing it, but it's a way of doing it.
Yeah, I think it seems to me it just at this point it's easier to go and clearer because I look at Jill and she's got to figure all this out and keep track of this. To just go article by article. We've only got a handful of articles here. It's not like there's 87.
We just want to have her earn her money. That's all.
Yeah. Jerry.
I would be willing to support reaffirmation of the entire warrant except Articles 6 and 7, if that would save us time.
I'd second if that is a motion.
You can exclude individual warrant articles from the motion to reaffirm and just discuss those articles.
All right, then that's my motion, that we reaffirm the entire warrant with the exception of Articles 6 and 7.
Okay.
Unless one of the people who voted no for one of the other articles, then that's perfectly in order.
My brain is not grasping that statement, so I'm gonna skip that for the moment. I've seen hands go up and hands go down. Jerry, do you still have another? No. Okay. All right. So the vote that's on the floor is to reaffirm Articles 2, 3.
Mark, I have a question.
Hang on. We're dealing with Articles 2, Article 3, and Article 5. Okay, so that's what the vote that's on the floor did. Okay, sorry, Karen, go right ahead.
Okay, I just have another clarifying question. So for instance, on Article 2, I voted no. If we vote to affirm what we already did, it's still going to be a 6-4 recommendation, right, on Article 2?
That's correct.
Okay, I just want to make sure that stays put. So everything.
Yes, it does not. Yeah, it does not change. That's the re part of affirm.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yeah. Dave.
I didn't hear anybody second Jerry's motion, so I will if nobody else did.
I want to say somebody did, but
I thought Brian did.
Oh yeah, Brian did. That's right, Brian did. Okay.
I didn't hear that. Sorry.
Okay. We good to vote? So we are reaffirming the votes, the school budget votes for Articles 2, 3, and 5. Dave, something else? Or is your hand? Okay. All right. So with that, roll call vote. Karen.
Yes.
Armand.
Yes.
Brian.
Yes.
Paul.
Yes.
Peter.
Yes.
Jerry.
Yes.
Dave.
Yes.
Mike.
Yes.
Clint.
Yes.
Andy.
Yes.
Okay. So we have reaffirmed the votes that previously taken on Articles 2, 3, and 5. So that now brings us to Article 6. So
to make a motion for Article 6 to see if the Pembroke School District will vote to establish a vehicle expendable trust fund under the provisions of RSA 19820C for the purpose of purchasing, replacing, or repairing school district vehicles to raise and appropriate the sum of $20,000 to be placed in this fund, and further to appoint the school board, Pembroke School Board, as agents to expend from this fund. Majority vote required.
Is there a second?
Second.
We'll give it to, well, gee, I heard three of them there. We'll give it to Paul for it. We'll spread the wealth here. Give it to Paul. Okay. We've already had some discussion on this. I think everybody's heard the pros and cons. Is there anything else anybody wants to add or question about number 6, Article 6? Jerry.
Yeah, I'll just offer that this could potentially be a gamble for the people that really want to see this, really want to see the truck. Because if this comes up at the floor of the meeting and it's defeated, you can't get that thing with reserves. If you vote it through without that school board as agents to expend, I'm going to give up my objection to it, and you're going to get your truck. So if it means more that you have to say, that it means to get the truck, we can go down that route. But you should know that I certainly will bring it up on the floor of the meeting to amend that warrant article, and we'll let the voters decide. If that's a political risk you want to take, we can go that way.
Actually, it's the right way to go, Jerry. Let the voters decide whether they want to create the fund, and second, whether they want to make the exchange, the agents to expend the school board. That's the way to do it.
No, that's what we do with all our warrants. All of them are subject to the voters approving them or not approving them.
No, what I'm saying is if the voters say, let's create the fund, and then they turn around and amend it such that the school board is not the agents to expend, then you get essentially what you want. The fund is created. How it's funded then becomes the issue in number 7.
No, they have the town.
Okay, hold on.
Power.
I don't want to get into back and forth. I'm going to try to keep this moving forward. So, Andy, you had wanted to say something.
Yeah, just quickly. I get what everybody's saying. We've heard from both sides. Currently, it's moot because I can't change that warrant article tonight without my board voting on it anyway. So we got to vote on it the way it is. So we might as well move on.
I'm sorry, Karen, I cut you off. Did you want to add anything further?
No, I'm good, Mark. Thank you.
Okay. All right. So I do think we're ready to vote on this one then. So I'll start. Karen.
No.
Armand.
No.
Ryan.
No.
Paul.
Yes.
Peter. Jerry.
No.
Dave. Dave, you're on mute.
Yes.
Okay. Mike.
No.
Clint.
Yes.
Andy.
Yes.
That's 6 no's. So therefore, the budget committee does not recommend approval. All right, Article 7. So this is to see if the Pembroke School District will, contingent upon passage of Article 6, vote to raise and appropriate sum of up to $32,500 to be added to the Vehicle Expendable Trust Fund, previously established, sum to come up from the June 30th unassigned fund balance, available for transfer on July 1, 2021. No amount to be raised from taxation, majority vote required. Is there a motion?
Motion to approve Article 7?
Second.
Okay. And Karen and Andy. All right. Any discussion? Jerry.
I'm betwixt and between here because I don't oppose Article 7 if Article 6 were written the way I liked it. So now I don't exactly know how to vote on this, but I'll figure something out in the next 30 seconds.
Any other comments? I think we're probably ready to vote on this one too. All right, so I'll start with Andy.
Yes.
Clint.
Yes.
Mike.
No.
Dave.
Yes.
Jerry.
No.
Peter.
No.
Paul.
No.
Brian.
No.
Armand.
No.
Karen.
No.
Okay, so that's 7 no's, so this is not recommended by the Budget Committee. All right. That concludes our work with the school budget. Shall we carry on to the town?
Dare I make a motion to affirm all of the votes on this town warrant?
Second.
Motion second. Is there any discussion? Jerry, you got your hand up.
That was a problem. I can't take my hand down. I click on it, nothing happens.
There's a delay there. It's the internet. You know, it's probably going through Hong Kong or something. Okay. Any discussions? All right, since we're ready to vote. On the reaffirmation of the vote on the town warrant article, the complete set of warrant articles. So I'll start with Andy.
Yes.
Clint.
Yes.
Mike.
Yes.
Dave.
Yes.
Jerry.
Yes.
Peter.
Yes.
Paul.
Yes.
Brian.
Yes.
Armand.
Yes.
Karen.
Yes.
All right, the committee has reaffirmed the full set of recommendations for the town. So that concludes the major chunks of business. So is there any other business for us tonight? I do want to point out that the school district is looking to hold their town meeting on May 1st. It's my understanding from David that the selectmen the other night voted to retain traditional town meeting date. So that's March, whatever it is, 13th, I believe it is. So we will be kind of like splitting things, which I personally don't think is a good idea, but it's not my call, certainly. So just kind of sharing that. Any other business? Jerry.
Hey, Mark, this is David.
Yes, David.
When do you want the reports? And when are you going to come by to sign them?
So let's see. That's why I was just going to check the schedule here. So we have to have things signed by the 17th, if I'm reading our schedule correctly here. So I assume, David, you can have copies of the town warrant. When do you believe you would have copies of the town warrant available for us to sign?
Monday.
Okay.
I'd like to get them done as soon as possible because the selectmen meet on the 16th and then they could accept them that night for posting. I'm not sure how quickly the school could turn theirs around, but I would imagine you want them all here to sign, right?
Yes. Yeah. We're just one place. We don't want people tromping to two places. Amber, it looks like you're still on. Would you be able to have the finalized warrants for signing over to David at Town Hall on Monday?
Yes, that shouldn't be an issue.
Okay. All right. So each of us as committee members need to plan to swing by Town Hall in the next week or so. Again, the final date is the 17th, but as you heard David say, he'd like it sooner rather than later. So, if you can try to make a point to get to Town Hall first part of next week, if possible, to sign off, that would be great.
Once I have them all, I'll email so everybody knows that they're here. And from there, you can sign them in the morning whenever you can.
Great. Thank you, David. That'll be helpful. Other business. Jerry.
Yeah, I just want to reaffirm, because we had discussions about being able to do informational sessions if the meetings were delayed or anything, but taping or recording tonight's meeting and making that available makes that moot. So I just want to reaffirm, we will be signing the documents next week sometime, and the next event for the school board will be the Saturday of the town meeting.
That's correct. Yeah, and I agree. Yeah, we did, we did toss around the idea of an information session as a simple, as a refresher or what have you. But then the idea of recording the public hearing came up. I think we had good solid information presented by Amber and by David. It's all laid out there. We walked it through. The questions and comments are also available to people. So with that on the town website, I think that's sufficient. Other comments or thoughts? Jerry again.
Just one final, you'll have to do a revision on the summary of tax rate to reflect the difference on Article 6 and 7 between recommended or requested by the district and recommended by the budget committee, correct?
That's correct. Yeah, thank you, Jerry. Thank you. I would have forgotten about that. So I'll make that note now. Okay. Anything else? All right. Well,
Motion to adjourn?
Okay. So before you jump in, I do want to just say thank you to everybody. Since this is sort of our last working meeting in effect before we'll reconvene in March at town meeting. I just want to thank everybody. I know this has been a challenging year, certainly. I mean, we've never met this way before. We've never conducted business this way before. We've certainly never conducted a public hearing this way before. But I think I believe this evening went fairly smoothly. Certainly, if folks hear otherwise, we'll get that feedback, and if we hopefully we never have to do it this way again. But if we do, we can do it better. But I want to thank everybody. Everybody participated. Everybody was congenial, collaborative, and this is to the budget committee, but it's also again to the boards and the administrators. I do think we all worked pretty well together, fairly smooth, given all the challenges that we had. So with that, I'll entertain that motion, Jerry.
Thank you, Mark, for your hard work as well. It's been greatly appreciated.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
Nice job, Mark.
Motion to adjourn.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you, Mark.
Second.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
See you all later. Thank you very much.
Thank you.